Dear students, today we are going to discuss one of the most modern, analytical, and intellectually engaging questions in IR. And the question is, what are the key theoretical perspectives of non Western approaches to understanding world politics, and how do they challenge Western paradigms? This question has become increasingly important in CSS and PMS examinations because IR is no longer viewed as a discipline developed exclusively through Western experiences. In recent decades, scholars from Asia, Africa, Latin America, Islamic world have the traditional theories of IR, such as realism, liberalism, and even constructivism, are heavily influenced by European history and Western political experiences. Consequently, they fail to fully explain the political realities, historical experiences, and cultural values of non Western societies. Therefore, the examiner expects you to answer two fundamental questions. One, what are the major non Western approaches to IR? Number two, how do these approaches challenge the dominant Western theories and assumptions? This is not a question that asks you to reject Western theories, rather, it requires you to critically evaluate their limitations and explain how non Western perspectives enrich our understanding of global politics. Let me begin with a simple analogy. Imagine that a physician develops a medicine after studying only European patients and then prescribes the same treatment to people living in Asia, Africa, Latin America without considering differences in climate, genetics, diet, or culture. Would that approach always produce the best results? Would it? Certainly not. Similarly, many scholars argued that IR theories were developed primarily by observing European history such as Treaty of Westphalia, the Napoleonic Wars, the World Wars, and the Cold War, and therefore may not adequately explain civilizations with different historical experiences. Is Amitav Acharya, one of the leading contemporary scholars of global IR, famously remarked, the study of IR can no longer remain the study of waste by the waste for the waste. This statement captures the central theme of today's lecture. Before discussing non Western approaches, we must briefly understand what is meant by Western paradigms. The discipline of IR emerged formally after First World War in Europe and was largely shaped by Western scholars. The dominant Western theories include realism, liberalism, constructivism. These theories have made immense contributions to IR and continue to explain many aspects of world politics. However, critics argue that they often assume the sovereign state is the primary actor. European historical experiences are universally applicable. Western political institutions represent the standard model of governance. Modern modernity follows a Western path of development. Non Western scholars challenge these assumptions. Several developments encouraged the emergence of non Western international relations. First, decolonization created dozens of newly independent states across Asia and Africa. Second, the rise of powers such as China, India, Brazil, and regional organizations reduced Western dominance in global politics. Third, globalization facilitated greater intellectual exchange among scholars from different civilizations. Finally, many scholars believe that IR should reflect the diversity of world civilizations rather than only European experiences. Thus emerged the movement commonly known as non Western IR, international relations, or global IR. One of the most influential non Western approaches originates in China. Drawing upon Confucian philosophy, Chinese scholars emphasize harmony rather than confrontation, moral leadership instead of coercion, mutual benefit, cooperative security, long term stability. The concept of Tianxia, meaning all under heaven, views the international system as an interconnected community rather than a collection of competing sovereign states. Unlike classical realism, which emphasizes power competition, the Chinese approach stresses relational governance and peaceful coexistence. China's Belt and Road Initiative (BRI) is frequently discussed as an example of emphasizing connectivity and economic cooperation, although analysts differ in their assessment of its strategic implications. India's contribution to IR combines ancient strategic thought with modern normative principles. The ancient scholar Kautilya in the Arthashastra emphasized national interest, strategic alliances, diplomacy, balance of power. His mandala theory argues that neighboring states are often rivals, while more distant states may become natural allies. At the same time, modern Indian foreign policy has also been influenced by non alignment, peaceful coexistence, strategic autonomy. Thus, Indian thought integrates both realist and normative traditions. Islamic approaches to IR derive from the principles of Quran, Sunnah, and classical Islamic political thought. Core principles include adl, peace, human dignity, consultation means shura, fulfillment of treaties, protection of civilians, moral responsibility in warfare. Unlike theories that focus exclusively on power, Islamic thought seeks to combine ethics with politics. Historical examples include the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, often cited as a model of strategic diplomacy and peaceful conflict resolution. Contemporary scholars argue that Islamic international relations offer an ethical framework emphasizing justice alongside national interests. African approaches emphasize community, reconciliation, human solidarity, shared responsibility. The philosophy of Ubuntu, meaning I am because we are, reflects the belief that human beings and societies are interconnected. This approach has significantly influenced peace building and post conflict reconciliation in Africa. Unlike traditional realism, Ubuntu emphasizes cooperation over rivalry. Latin American scholars developed important theories concerning dependency, unequal economic relations, colonial legacies, global inequality. Dependency theory argues that many developing countries remain economically dependent upon industrialized powers due to historical patterns established during colonialism. This perspective challenges liberal assumptions that free trade automatically benefits all countries equally. The broader Global South approach highlights colonial history, economic inequality, development challenges, climate justice, reform of international institutions. Scholars argue that many international organizations continue to reflect post Second World War power structures rather than contemporary global realities. This perspective advocates greater representation for developing countries in global governance. Having understood these perspectives, let's examine how these challenge traditional Western theories. Non Western scholars argue that IR should not be based exclusively on European history. World politics should also incorporate Asian, African, Islamic, and Latin American experiences. Traditional theories rely heavily on